ABC News.
Britain is planning to test a series of measures, including coronavirus status certifications, over the coming weeks to see if they can allow people to safely return to mass gatherings at sporting arenas, nightclubs and concerts. Officials are also developing plans to test out COVID-19 passports that are expected to show if a person has received a vaccine, has recently tested negative for the virus, or has some immunity due to having had coronavirus in the previous 6 months. So for more on these issues surrounding vaccine passports, I'm joined now by futurist and emerging technology expert Ian Khan, who joins us from the Toronto area in Canada. Thanks for joining us, Ian.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me.
So there's been a lot of debate that we've been covering on our show in recent months around vaccine passports and how they could work. What are some of the ways they could be introduced? Do you see them as hard copies like a traditional passport, or do you see it more as a digital version of that?
So there are different things happening right now in some countries, especially in Europe. Some countries have come out with paper-based certifications, which essentially is a paper you can show to somebody and say, "Hey, I've got the vaccine and I'm not a spreader, or I'm safe to be around." In some countries, you also have an app. For example, in the United Arab Emirates, they have an app that they've released, and you can figure out that somebody's had a vaccine. So different countries are doing different things. I really believe there's a huge possibility of forgery happening and the certificates not being authentic and genuine in some cases if they are still paper-based. So we have to think digital in this era of technology. One of the countries that has done a tremendous amount of work on this is the UAE, again, through their GX platform, the government experience platform, and they have rapidly inoculated and vaccinated almost 80% of their population, and now they're working on a digital version of the vaccine passport. In America, in the larger Western world, technology companies have formed a consortium to come together and figure out what to do. The International Airlines and Transportation Authority Association has released their own version of a vaccine passport that's being tested in Singapore. And so different things are happening, and I really believe that digital is the way to go.
So when you say digital's the way to go, what role does something like blockchain or AI have to play in all of this?
Absolutely. So you said the right words here. Blockchain technology is a way eons ahead of traditional databases where information can be stolen, information is not secure, but not on blockchain. On blockchain, end users, people whose vaccine certificates are on it, they can have some control on ensuring who gets access to their data and who doesn't get access to their data. And this is a big challenge today where people are not feeling safe with digital vaccination passports. But blockchain can give people the control so that you can share information with the parties you want. AI is a great word and technology as well, but I think we don't need to go to artificial intelligence. It's way too ahead, but it can be done by blockchain itself.
So, Ian, what's your view, I guess, regardless of how this all plays out with the technology? Do you think that vaccine passports could guarantee safety in the long run? And I guess what I mean by that is, could they signal a return to what used to be normal life? Is that the key to things here?
So we've definitely moved away from what used to be normal, and we're heading towards a different normal, a better normal. Now, right now, the world is in a transition phase. We're still figuring out how to do things, how to control the pandemic, and we've got to figure out different ways to make that happen. Governments are working on it. Private sector is working on it. So we all need to be a little bit patient, do our due diligence, put on our mask, and not take things for granted. There's thousands of lives that have been lost until now. I believe with the new mindset, we need to approach it in a different way. We've got to look at technology if it can help us do things in a different way. If it can help us open up economies, help us open up the restaurant industry, the travel industry. And these are the things we have to do to experiment, to go with the vaccination passport or some other options. And this seems to be the best option right now. I think this is the way to go.
Some critics, can I just ask, because some critics say that the vaccine passports, they could enable discrimination against poor people in impoverished nations, though, that might not have ready access to vaccines. I mean, are there some ethical arguments here as well?
To some extent, yes, I do believe there is an ethical argument to some extent, but we also need to figure out and understand what should we do to get going and how do we make sure everybody's included and nobody is left behind. Of course, in rural areas where people don't have access to a cell phone or the internet, it's a different thing. But how many of those people will board an international flight and go somewhere, right? We've got to separate the consumer world from the trade and commerce, right? If the crew of an airlines or a ship needs to have these certificates in order to transport equipment and goods, well, then that's a different thing from me walking into a store and buying some groceries. So we've got to do it. We've got to do more due diligence on this for sure. But that doesn't mean we outrightly reject the idea of using technology, blockchain, the COVID-19 passport as something that can help us open up the world.
That's Ian Khan, futurist and emerging technology expert, joining us from the Toronto area in Canada.